Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're zooming out. We're looking at the ultimate blueprint for enterprise security. Up until now, we've really been focusing on individual machines, standalone vulnerabilities, and basic networking. But let's be real. Out in the wild, businesses just do not operate on isolated laptops. They run on massive, interconnected ecosystems. So today the stakes get incredibly high, and honestly, the concepts get incredibly real. Because you're no longer just learning to defend a single host, you are learning to defend an entire corporate empire. Let's get into it.
Okay, let's dive into this roadmap. We're kicking off with an introduction to enterprise security. Then we'll break down the Active Directory core architecture, look at security and communication protocols, and finally, we're putting theory into practice.
Welcome to Enterprise Security, laying our foundation. First off, I got to acknowledge the incredible progress you've made to get to this point. But as we move forward into this new phase, our entire focus shifts. We are completely leaving behind the concept of decentralized management. Now, we're focused entirely on the central nervous system of enterprise networks. It's all about scale, centralization, and enterprise-wide policies.
Moving on to Active Directory core architecture, building the digital fortress. To secure an enterprise, you absolutely have to understand how it's built, from the macro down to the micro. You can't defend a castle if you don't even know where the walls and the vaults are, right?
And at the very center of it all is Active Directory. This is the foundational ecosystem of enterprise networks. I want you to think of it as the ultimate city hall for a digital fortress. It manages literally every computer, user, policy, and permission. Think about how things used to be before AD became the standard. IT admins had to manage every single computer individually. Imagine having, say, 10,000 employees, and you've got to update passwords on 10,000 separate machines by hand. Just no way. Active Directory solved that by creating one centralized database. It's the absolute bedrock that lets admins enforce security configurations, push software out, and authenticate users from one single, highly secure location. Bottom line, if you want to master enterprise security, you have to master this ecosystem.
So to really grasp this, we have to start at the very top, with what we call a forest. This is the absolute highest level of structural organization. If Active Directory is our digital fortress, the forest represents the outermost boundary walls. It is the big, overarching container that holds absolutely everything else we're going to build. In technical terms, a forest represents a complete security boundary. So by default, users and admins outside of this forest, they have zero access to what's inside. You have to explicitly establish trust relationships if you want to communicate with other forests. Literally nothing in our enterprise blueprint exists outside of it. Now, let's zoom in a bit. Tucked safely inside that massive forest boundary, we have domains. These are logical structural groups. You can think of domains as the individual, highly organized operational buildings inside the fortress walls, like your HR department, IT, or sales. Now, while the forest is the ultimate security boundary, the domain is really your primary administrative boundary. This is where your user accounts, computer objects, and groups actually live day to day. For example, a massive multinational company might have one giant forest, but they'll use separate domains for their North American and European branches. It just keeps management localized, clean, and efficient. And this brilliantly illustrates how it all connects. The architecture flow is simple but strict. It goes from the forest directly down to the domains. If you can just lock this elegant hierarchy into your brain right now, you'll never get lost when we start stacking complex permissions later on. Keep in mind, a single forest can hold multiple domains, but a domain can only belong to one forest. It is a strict parent-child relationship. And understanding this flow is absolutely crucial, because when a threat actor breaches an environment, their ultimate goal is usually to move laterally through those domains, escalate their privileges, and eventually take over the entire forest.
Section 3. Security and Communication Protocols. The rules of engagement. We've built the physical structure of our fortress, but now we need to look at the invisible rules that allow users, computers, and services to actually talk to each other securely.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the protocol that makes all of this tick. LDAP, or Lightweight Directory Access Protocol. This is the primary protocol we use for communicating with and querying the directory. If you think of Active Directory as this massive, complex filing cabinet, well, LDAP is the specific language we use to ask that cabinet for a file. Whether an application is looking up a user's email address or checking to see if someone is actually part of the domain admins group, that query is happening via LDAP. It's usually operating over port 389 or port 636 if we're using secure connections. Without LDAP, all that beautifully organized data inside our domains, totally inaccessible.
But hey, Communication isn't just about finding information, right? It's about proving who you say you are. Enter Kerberos and NTLM. Fun fact here, Kerberos is actually named after Cerberus, the three-headed dog from Greek mythology that guards the underworld. And honestly, that is exactly what these protocols do. They are the security guards checking IDs at the gates of our domains. Now, Kerberos is the modern, highly secure gold standard. When you log in, it uses this clever system of encrypted tickets, kind of like a digital VIP pass, to prove your identity without ever actually sending your raw password over the network. NTLM, on the other hand, is an older legacy protocol. It relies on a challenge-response mechanism. It's definitely less secure, but you'll see it kept around for compatibility with older systems. Knowing the difference between these two is an absolute must for any security professional.
All right, Section 4, Putting Theory into Practice. Hard hats on, everyone. We are transitioning out of theoretical listening mode and straight into action-oriented doing mode. Because let's face it, understanding the theory is only half the battle. The only true way to master an enterprise ecosystem is to roll up your sleeves and build one yourself.
Let's move to and see how this builds out in practice. Here is your exact hands-on roadmap for today. Step 1, build the AD lab. This is where you'll spin up your virtual environment and lay down all the networking groundwork. Then, Step 2, enterprise AD setup. This is where you're going to take a standard server and actually promote it to a domain controller, officially configuring those forest and domain structures we were just talking about.
And that brings us to the ultimate goal, the Enterprise AD Setup Project. This is going to be the incredibly satisfying culmination of everything we've covered today. You aren't just reading about these concepts anymore. You're going to physically combine your new knowledge of forests, domains, LDAP querying, and Kerberos authentication into one fully functional enterprise system. Honestly, when you successfully promote your first domain controller and see that forest actually come to life, it's a real game changer in your IT journey. You are literally bringing the blueprint to life.
So, with the forest planted, the domains structured, and our communication protocols securely in place, are you ready to build your own enterprise? Take this energy, fire up your labs, and I will see you on the command line.